Good.
Okay, folks, once again, I want to state for the record, this is not being streamed, so noted in the minutes. We have technical difficulties outside our control here, but we always take good minutes. With that being said, Warrant is present. Our next meeting, remember I asked you folks to work with me, and it seemed like you were kind enough to do that. It's going to be Monday, November 22nd. Okay? And I do appreciate that. We will have it on at Finance Committee at 9 o'clock. There could be other committees, we'll see as things develop. So at this point, I need a motion to approve as you reviewed the regular minutes of the September 24th meeting. Motion. Okay. I got a motion by Monty and a second by Darlene. All in favor? Aye. We're going to start out with our Chief Executive Officer's report, Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My report was included in your board packet. As always, it's just a quick COVID update. We've completely drawn down the CARES Act money, a little over $32 million. We then moved on to the PRISA funds, which we've drawn down about $6.2 million of the $16.7 we were awarded. As of the writing of this report, we had one employee out. We now have four, thank you, Jackie. We now have 4 out with COVID, which all in all isn't bad when you consider, a couple weeks ago we were up to 15 or 16, so. TNT, thanks to Mr. Lawrence, I was invited on October 4th to meet virtually with TNT to discuss the challenges central regarding bus operator shortage. We reviewed the qualifications, the process to become a bus operator, and also got into a little bit of a discussion on BRT and the planning process. October 8th, Chris and Steve and I met with JMT Engineering to discuss BMT. They have extensive experience in planning, designing system throughout the country and have offices here in Syracuse. The BRT discussion is an ongoing thing, and it's going to continue to be. I think it's going to happen here in Syracuse. It's a timing thing. It's a timing thing, and it's an operator. We have some funds. We've got some CMAQ funds that we were ready to last June, put more service on the street, and we just don't have the operators to do it. But as we continue to grow those ranks, I don't know if Jackie's going to get into this in her report. We've got a strong class this time. That class will end sometime in January. We'll start another one in February. We've got some very strong prospects for that class as well, application-wise. So, I think it's a combination of things. It's the ending of the enhanced unemployment dollars. People, the advertising we've been doing, which we haven't done in the past. We were on radio, we're on TV. So I think all of the efforts from the HR department are starting to pay off. And my hope is that, sometime in the late first quarter, early second quarter of next year, that we'll be back to full service. Steve's going to touch a little bit on some of the service enhancements coming up with our next sign up. So I'll let him get into that.
Ron, what's our current shortage of drivers?
30?
35.
We try to budget 205, understanding that, you're going to have 20 or so at any point out on comp or disability. Try to run with the 185, and we might be at 155, 160 right now. All right, so once we get those numbers back up, a couple of really strong classes of 20, we'll be back to where we need to be to put full service on. Then we build from there. To put BRT out there, we need another 10 or 12 anyway. To do the enhanced CMAQ, we're going to need a couple more. So it's just going to be a building effort.
Do you see drivers coming from the school bus driving pool, or because with their major shortages that they have?
I think we get some. the biggest challenge we have, and, you know, this is an ongoing conversation with the union, is our schedule. You know, so you can go work for first student and make $3 or $4 less an hour, but you're working 7 to 3, 7 to 4, Monday through Friday, and you're done. Here you're working possibly a 12-hour day, where you're out on the road for 4 or 5 hours, you're back here for 2 or 3 hours, then you're back out on the road for 3 hours. You're working weekends, you're working nights, you know, so it's a challenging schedule. And when you start as a new operator, and it's all done by seniority, you're not getting the pick of the lineup, you know, so you're working the late nights, you're working the weekends. So some people, I think the challenge we've had is that it's a quality of life thing. You know, where maybe years ago it was, well, I wanna go to the company that's gonna pay me the most and my net check is gonna be the highest. Now it's, I'm willing to give up a few bucks an hour if I can be home with my family more and I get weekends off. And, you know, if I go and work a weekend, it's because I'm driving, you know, to West Tennessee School District to a game out of town or something. So that's our challenge, you know, and that's one of the things that we're looking at, you know, hopefully with some system redesign. But again, it's that never-ending schedule, you know, we know what we need to fix, we know how to change it, but we need the bus operators to do it, so we just have to get there.
You say 180, that's for all your key.
No, that's here.
That's just here.
That's just here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, interestingly, you know, we're really not having the shortages in the outlying properties that we're having here. You know, I mean, Rome's our smallest operation, and, you know, we're fine there. Oswego, you know, we could probably add 1 or 2.
Yeah, I mean, we're always on the edge at the outer properties, but we're always maintaining our
Yeah.
capacity. But you could always use 1 or 2 more in each one.
But again, you know, I think a lot of that goes back to the ease of the schedule. You know, you could be a bus operator in Auburn, you're not working like you do here in
Here in
Syracuse.
Syracuse. There's more opportunity here, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the other end of it.
Yeah, a lot of opportunity, it's, you just gotta wanna do it. You looking to get your CDL by any chance?
Not this week.
Well, he already has a bus he owns, so.
Brian, I just want to thank you publicly for appearing on the T&T program and bringing us up to date on what's going on with Central and everything, because there's a lot of misconception information that you brought to light, and anyone can come on the T&T program. We're staying for tomorrow's neighborhood today, and everything is done virtual right now, so you can still appear for the city of Syracuse. And you can go on the website. It's the Southside T&T program, and anyone could appear on that because it's done virtual.
Yeah, and that's, you know, the misconception thing kind of flows into my next, the mobility focus group. So October 12th, met with a group comprised of city and county planning departments. There was airport officials there, local Department of Transportation. Neil was there, you know, representing the city, to discuss a comprehensive plan that Onondaga County is putting together. And part of the challenge with that is, you know, everybody's got great ideas about transportation and bus operations. It's just this misunderstanding. You know, well, how come you don't run a bus out to the airport? Well, I've got a wife and 3 kids, and I can't imagine heading to the airport to go to Disney and taking 10 bags and 3 kids and getting on a bus to come down to the hub and then transferring to another bus to get out to the airport. It's just not gonna happen.
That was my first question when I became a board member, someone called me.
Yeah.
I swear to God.
Really?
That was the first question they asked me.
So from a passenger standpoint, we probably couldn't do it, but one thing we are talking to the airport authority about, especially because they have grown and they've added so many employees out there, is the number of employees that could maybe take buses out there. So they're working on putting together zip codes for us that will work with the planning department and see if it's possible to run some kind of service out there. You know, and everybody's like, wow, you know, you got a bus that goes down Route 11, why don't you just turn it into the airport? Well, the airport is what, 2 miles?
It says
2 miles.
7, 8 minute deviation.
2 miles off the street, and then by the time you unload people and you come to 2 miles back, you're not making your next connection, you know, so a lot of it was just answering questions like that, and, but all in all, I think it was a great conversation. It kind of, as Neil and I were talking about, you know, it started here and it kind of peaked, and then it went down, and then it came back, so it was all in all a good discussion.
Brian, have you talked to people at Provident Transportation? Do you know who they are?
Yes, yep, Provident Services?
Yeah,
Yep.
they are running shuttles to get people to and from work, and maybe if we work with them and take from them what we can do and give them the work rides that we can't do, we can be doing a public service.
Deb Hunley from Provident Services, we're in contact with her. When she needs something, she'll contact us, and we do communicate, so we are,
Good.
yeah.
Good, because I think that could be a good cooperation that could be positive for Centro.
Yeah, and one of the women that was there, and I can't think of her name right now, but, you know, she made a comment, she just moved here from Boston, and she gets to the airport and she can't catch a bus to get to where she needs to go, so she's gotta either wait for a cab or call an Uber. And that's the other challenge, you know, we get lots of feedback from people that come from Boston and New York and these high-density cities where you just run buses constantly, and you can walk out at any street corner and hop on a bus. It's not Syracuse. I mean, you got 140,000 people in the city, 400 and some thousand in the county. You know, we're not even a blip on the Boston map, you know, so it's.
We're a
it's just
neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. It's
We're a
just
neighborhood in Boston.
Just a different world, and it's a more challenging world to run public transportation. Capital Region and Mid-Hudson, commuter bus, I was asked by NISDOT to participate in the process to review Capital and Mid-Hudson Region is doing their rural service. It was different transit leaders throughout New York State. It's a multi-step process, it's still going on. Our next step is to do, we reviewed the RFP, we're now gonna do interviews and then select a candidate to enter into that contract. That's all I have unless you have questions.
Good, good work. Good work. And I had a technical difficulty trying to get on that meeting, Julia, so, but Brian let me know what was going on, so I'm glad that we were able to, help out there. Good. Okay, any other questions for Brian before?
One
Go ahead,
more.
Joe.
You said that the job fair didn't go very well on October the 1st, right, at the Salt City Market?
Mhm.
Yeah, we're thinking of, not thinking of, I think we're actually planning it, I don't want to step on Jackie's toes, but doing a job fair here.
You can give my.
Oh, that's a good idea.
You didn't submit a report, so I don't know what you're gonna talk about. So if I'm stealing your thunder, sorry. But yeah, I think one of the things we're gonna be doing is actually opening our doors here. She's been in contact with CDTA in Albany. They had a pretty successful job fair there. So, you know, we'll actually bring candidates in here, walk them around the facility, and
Yeah.
you know, one of the challenges too, that, you know, we have, and Chris brought this up, he did testimony in front of the Transportation Committee on Wednesday. I couldn't make it, so he went. And then, you know, meeting afterwards with transportation commissioners and other people. One of the challenges we have is the CDL process itself. You know, go through and get your CDL license. New York State doesn't deviate. You know, so if you go get your CDL, it's for a bus, it's for a dump truck, it's for, I mean, whatever commercial vehicle out there. So our guys have to go through and open engine compartments during their test and point out different, yeah, this is this piece and this is this piece. They don't have to do that here. If the bus stops running, they get on the radio and they call the tow truck. And we send out one of the mechanics of the tow truck, and either they get it running or they tow it back. You know, they're not out there trying to fix vehicles. So I think one of the things that would help us and would, you know, help the process is if they came up with different CDL test.
Yeah.
You know, here's your CDL, cause you're gonna go operate a multi-passenger bus, period. But, you know, that's nothing that's gonna be immediate, so we gotta continue to fight that fight. That's all I got. Christopher?
Thank you, Brian. Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the board. As Brian brought up on Wednesday, I was representing the authority at Centro on a transportation, the Assembly Committee on Transportation in Albany represented our hearing. The focus was zero-emission buses, as well as some resolutions or to first mile, last mile, which is, you know, we have the bus that runs down James Street, but how do we get the individual, you know, 3 blocks away to that bus route? As the city, or some of you might have seen, the city has recently launched their bike share, scooter share program. So we're looking to communicate with the city on that and some options there. And then other things that Brian's talked about is kind of some on-demand. So the testimony went very well. The Assemblyman and Chairman of the committee, Magdarelli, was very open. He's obviously familiar with the Syracuse area. So he'd asked a few questions regarding that. Jeff is gonna talk a little bit further in his report on some of the technology that we're looking at that hopefully will get us into that transition and also work with what we're doing today with CNG. So that was on Wednesday, and then as a follow-up to Brian's point with the test, the road test is they're looking with the committee and hopefully with NIPTA to form a group next week. There's actually the NIPTA conference in Albany. So hopefully we can share our ideas that everybody's come together with and resolve some of these CDL issues that we're having. And then on September 25th, which was just after our last board meeting, Central participates in providing transportation to the airport for Honor Flight. So this is something that we're very excited. We've been doing it with conjunction with Honor Flight to provide transportation on the airport from the parking lot to the terminal for individuals that wanted to partake in the Honor Flight. So if anybody's not familiar with it, this is a program that's throughout the country. Syracuse has a chapter here that provides transportation to Washington, D.C. for military veterans from World War II, Korea, Vietnam. It allows them to go down there and see the memorials that maybe they might not be able to do. So it's a chartered flight. We transport them in the morning to the terminal, and then we go back in the afternoon when they return on that flight and bring them back to their vehicles. So it's something we're very excited about. They love our participation. Every year it grows in the number of people that participate. So I just want to make sure the board is aware of that and in that service.
Yeah, there's over 80 veterans that went this year.
Very nice.
Awesome.
Yes. So I think their next one might be in the spring. Usually it's around April. We're waiting on that date. And hopefully we can provide the service again for them. And that concludes my report.
Thanks, Chris. Jackie, you got anything left?
Well, not really, but I can repeat a couple of things. Good morning, everyone. So, as Julius had indicated, we attended 2 community job fair events. One was at Salt City Market, and the other one was at Clancy Middle School, which was, I think, last Friday, and that was geared towards hiring transportation, people in transportation. Unfortunately, we didn't see a lot of participants there, maybe 10 at the most, so we're not really getting a lot from the job fairs around the communities or anything. We have been getting some, you know, we're seeing mostly from either advertisements, Indeed, or just people recommending other people, drivers recommending other people. Right now, we do have a class that's going through the training to become a Central driver. We have 11 in Syracuse at this time, so hopefully all 11 will turn in sometime in November, mid-November. In December, we're going to be starting another class up. We're hoping to have 20 in that class, so we're recruiting very hard right now for that. And as Brian has mentioned, after that class turns in, then we're looking February. So hopefully we'll have the amount of drivers that we're looking to get on board to fill these open positions and get Central back up and running for the community.
One of the challenges, I interrupt you, and I mentioned this to Julie at the beginning, is that our classes in the last 2 or 3 have been, you know, 5, 6, 7,
Yeah.
and that doesn't even cover attrition. You know, so when you've got, you know, terminations, retirements, whatever the case may be, you know, you're bringing in 5, but you're losing 6.
But you're
going
in the
backwards.
melt of the class too, on top of that.
Yep.
Yeah, so you're going backwards, so this is gonna be the first class, I think, that we're gonna see at least, you know, a net gain, which is very, very positive.
Yeah.
Right, and then hopefully, yes.
One of the things that I'm glad we got this passed is that for us, I know I'm retired, so I can do this, just to ride the bus.
You're just rubbing it in, aren't you?
Just to see what they go through and stuff.
We wouldn't do such a thing.
And since I retired, I ride the bus now constantly, just to see what they're going through and everything, and the things that they have to face. And, I talk to the drivers and stuff, and just to see what they're going through. We don't
Yeah.
really recognize sometimes, I know, because we are not drivers, what they have to go through.
Well, in our labor, or HR department, we have a labor relations, manager, you know, and his job is to, you know, work with the operators, and he hands out discipline and stuff like that. And he regularly rides the bus now, so he goes out, he goes on different routes, and
Okay.
just to see what they're going through.
Yeah.
And, you know, so I think that's been a positive step too.
Yep, absolutely. I also have a meeting, this afternoon with Monty with Oswego County, and we're gonna be discussing on how to get, people their permits for CDL, and then once we get them their permits for the CDL, you know, where do we go from here? You know, I think Oswego is gonna take some, and if there's some left over, you know, maybe they'll come to Central too.
So I think, so it's, I hope you get more than some,
Yeah,
personally.
well.
And that's one of the, I think, the challenges we're gonna talk today about, person coming, getting their CDL, we don't want you to go drive a truck, although they can. But we're specifically trying to get them for bus, OPT or U, for
Yep.
bus training. And so, and I, talked with Rachel about, hey, let's think ahead too, because I just think, Rachel doesn't, Rachel's a workforce planning director in Oswego County. She's just trying to get people employed, they don't care where they work. And that was my comment, that if someone wants to be full-time, Tim had shared, you know, if you wanna be full-time, Syracuse is a better location. We know about the schedule changes, so that's one of the things, we mobility management starting Indeed, and we're reaching out and calling people specifically. We gotta kinda list, where you're 21, driver's record, blah, 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 to kinda weed some people out. Our goal for that class is to get 8. We are looking at, I think we need to get 15 or 16. But again, it's a starting point, and hopefully going forward, there'll be some potential drivers in the pools there
Yeah.
as we look at.
Absolutely, we'll take whatever,
Yeah.
you know, so, thank you
Oh, no, that's
for
good.
inviting us and everything, so. And that concludes my report unless anybody has any questions.
I just have an interesting point. I ride Colobus a lot, so I jabber with drivers because it's you and a driver. And it's a really good time to get what's going on. I'm hearing a lot of drivers that are driving both are looking to transfer to Colobus because they can't stand what's going on in the line buses. So that's just another little nugget that people are getting stressed out on the big bus. And they wanna come in where it's only maybe one or two people on the bus.
I hope that they're comfortable enough to, bring the concerns up through the channels here, so, they can be addressed. I'm a firm believer of that.
And a lot of times they do,
Yeah.
Yeah.
some don't.
Yeah.
And the way I get it out of them
Negative or positive?
is I talk to them about what they're doing, and they'll say, oh, I drive both. And I say, oh, what do you like? Which one do you like? Oh, why don't you like that? Or what's appealing? So I try to kinda pick it apart.
Yeah, you know, I don't think anybody on the management side has ever made light of it. It's not an easy job.
Mm-mm.
You know, you're dealing with the public, you're dealing with, you know, sometimes unruly passengers, and, you know, when it's brought to our attention, we have guys that go out and investigate, and, you know, we've banned people, you know, we got our wall of fame, we can take it downstairs and show it to you.
You know how to handle these situations.
You need to cut that out.
You got
Can I
experience
get
with
that pass
that.
back?
The buses have air conditioning, correct? I remember those days, been involved with this for a long time, when the buses did not have air conditioning. And my father-in-law was a bus operator. Boy, this was prior to me getting involved with this. Boy, I used to hear some of the complaints just from the air conditioning. But like I said, hopefully, let's be comfortable to kick those up through the chain there. There's no retaliation here on anything, you know, positive, negative, whatever it is. But voice, I mean, I think we have a group here that's open in management. Voice those opinions.
And we've got, like I said, if you go down to the operator's room, we got our wall of fame down there. You know, some it's a 30-day ban, sometimes it's a lifetime ban. They've got their picture right there.
Julius,
So if you
I
see.
noticed that, I think at our last meeting, some of the bus drivers having a picnic or something across the street from whatever that was. Would it be possible for us to have a spot here inside the central area, I don't know whether it'd be possible for them to have them, the cookout or something like that, instead of they have to go across the street and do it?
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about. So we had an impromptu tailgate party start in our parking lot, a little too close to one of the structures. So, in the interest of safety,
We have a national gas hub back there, don't we?
Yeah, we
Fire the grill right next to it.
A rather large one
Hope
that
there's
turned
not a
us
leak.
into a citywide barbecue. So in the interest of safety, we asked that they not do that, so that they took it upon themselves to move over to our J lot.
What about that parking lot across the street, is that central?
Yeah, it's called the J lot, yeah, that's
The one,
Oh,
if
okay.
you're looking, it's this way, it's not that way, it's this way.
So then we asked them to not do that because we're in the news. We're consistently saying we got a bus operator shortage. We got those 30 of them sitting there barbecuing.
This is me not taking minutes.
And this is me thanking God that we're not live streaming it now. So yeah, we have talked to the operators. Chris and I are down in Joe frequently in the operator room, and we're talking to them, you know, we're gonna, to do stuff like that, you know, do a cookout, I'll go out, throw an apron on and flip burgers, Chris will do the same thing,
It's a
you
little
know.
more sanctioned.
Yeah, something that's sanctioned, you know, we've done, we just recently did ice cream truck, we did, you know, we're looking at other food trucks just to bring in and hand out vouchers. So we wanna do stuff like that, just as a morale boost and things along those nature.
Just away from the gas.
Yeah.
Well, you have a bus rodeo, you could have a food truck rodeo.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, so we would just rather have it on a safer basis, that's all.
Yeah, that sounds safe.
Brian, is there any direct conversation with kids, especially the bus runs for the district, just about behavior and expectations? Does that happen, or is it every bus driver do their own?
You know, the bus drivers kind of do their own, we keep the, hopefully the behavior expectations are with the schools themselves, you know, that they're letting kids know how they behave on bus. You know, I'm knock on wood, I don't know
We're assuming, right?
this is for Micah, but we'll knock on that. We haven't had a lot of issues this year, you know, a lot of it's because we're doing direct busing rather than, you know, having them converge at multiple schools converging at the hub, which is what caused the issues last year, actually pre-pandemic. So yeah,
We might wanna be more intentional in the future.
we can do that.
Just
If you can
partnering
help
with
us
the
too.
districts, absolutely partnering
That'd be
with the
great.
districts to have those conversations ahead of time.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm sure that would help the operators.
Yeah, are you talking about like training on the bus?
No, I'm talking about expectations.
Behavior on
Of
the bus.
behavior.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I mean,
Yeah.
the first student in the Auburn School District.
Actually, Darlene, give a little, Darlene's got some background for our new board members, working in transportation for the Auburn School District, so.
Yeah, I worked.
Here, share some of your
I
insight.
worked, in the transportation office for years at the Auburn School District, and then I also worked as a teacher aide as well, so I got to see it from the classroom standpoint with the students, and then I also got to see it as the dispatcher, et cetera. Yeah, and every year, I think we had 4 or 5 intervals during the year at every single school. where the bus would arrange with the school for a time and show up,
Oh, yeah, I know
and the
something.
students had to go on the bus.
Those bus
Whether
drills.
they were busers or not, they all went on the bus, and they were given the expectations, and I call it a training, but you're right, it's expectations, and it was mandatory. I don't know, I think it was 5 times a year, if not 4, for sure, but it may have been 5 times a year at each school. Yeah.
Tony, you know how we can fix this? I went to Catholic school, K through 12, and I went to military academy. But if I got some of those nuns, if they're still around, they're probably about 110 to 120, we can fix this whole situation
Just
really
give him a
quick.
ruler, that's all I need.
Just a very holy ruler, yeah.
I went to Catholic school too, and if one of the nuns smacked you, you didn't go home and tell your parents that you got hit by a nun because you got it again.
Yeah.
Because you did something to piss off a nun to smack you.
See, and back then, the parents were, our mothers were
Yeah.
afraid of the nuns,
Yeah.
so it didn't matter what we said. But anyway, that's a good point, Darlene, that you're making, but that's, right, because we wanna make sure, they act respectful to our folks on the bus, they're under enough pressure, they're under enough
Yeah,
pressure.
and that they know the rules of the bus and they obey the rules of the bus too.
Well, I'm just
Yeah.
a believer that if you give people the expectations, especially kids, they'll rise to it.
Yeah.
It's when they don't have the expectations that
Yeah, it's all
it goes awry.
Structure.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
yeah.
certainly something we can do.
Okay.
Good, excellent.
Yeah.
All right, great this was great, really good conversation, Jackie.
All right.
Good
We
report.
won't come back for the next few months, we wanna invite you back.
You're gonna need to submit something, no, I'm just kidding.
I'll just submit it to Brian, he can give it.
Good morning, everybody. Last month, Chris Tuff, Mike Rice, and myself went to Denver, Colorado for a zero emissions bus conference. It was a good conference, a lot of great sessions, and during that, I talked to one of our colleagues out in California. They've purchased and been operating electric buses for a while. I asked them, what are you doing here? They said they're really interested in getting into the hydrogen fuel cell buses. I asked, well, what's the reason why? And the big reason was the structures are very expensive. In addition to that, if you do on-route charging, it's very expensive. And some other things, you have, reduced miles, bus can go 100 to maybe 200 miles, and then charge time's 4 hours plus. So that was one of the big things they said. And then when we were there at the conference, they mentioned that if you're already using CNG buses and running them and operating and you have your own plant, it's easy transition to move from CNG over to hydrogen fuel cell buses. The process is about the same. They're fueled with high pressure. It's about 5,000 PSI. We're running 3,600 PSI. It may take about 4 to 5 minutes longer to fill a bus, but that's way better than 4 hours. In addition to that, range is about 300 plus. Safety is about the same as we currently have, so we won't have to change much in the building. And then the transition, converting to electric is a lot easier. Mike and I on Tuesday had a meeting with the vendor, Ballard, and they were talking about a whole bunch of things about how it all works. I told them, look, you're gonna have to come back to this, this is a lot of information. But what they did say is, if you're gonna change from electric to hydrogen, the bus, what it would cost to do a fueling station is to do 100 fueling, to fuel 100 buses is about 8.3 million to boot to a station for hydrogen. It's about 60 to 80 million to build a station for electric. So it's quite expensive. In addition to that,
It's
we've
kind
been.
of interesting, because as you think about the movement to electric vehicles, et cetera, not a lot of time do we hear about the cost for the infrastructure that has to be set up to service that. But you hear about, oh yeah, the electric, so you actually have educated me here today, thank you.
Yeah, they've educated us. It was a great conference and
Good, excellent.
met a lot of great vendors, and our counterparts are really helping us out. And we have been doing a lot of research prior to this. We've had people come out. Gillig and Proterra brought their buses out here. We got to test them driving around town. They drive nice. They got a lot more pickup and everything. We're waiting for New Flyer, Nova, Eldorado, and BYD to bring their buses out here. And the other nice thing is that the electric bus is very similar to a hydrogen fuel cell bus. It runs about the same. The only difference is that its exhaust is H2O.
Yeah, one of the things that isn't widely shared, I don't know if I've shared this with the board before. So an electric bus, to operate in Syracuse, you got your 6 battery packs on it. They said roughly your range is 150 miles that you can go, which would run it for the day, and then it would have to come back and charge. But but if you wanna have heat on the bus, it's gonna cut that in half. So you gotta range
Wow.
about 75 miles, if you're running it off the battery. So the way to bypass that is they put a diesel motor, a diesel heater on the bus. So now you're kicking out diesel exhaust on a clean bus, so it's no longer a clean bus. And, you know, and
So-
actually with Gillick, that even
so
pointed that
really-
out to us, he said, yeah, he goes, if you guys wanted to do this here, you put the diesel heater, and it's not
So
not
really-
filtered at all. It's direct diesel exhaust, so you've just taken this clean bus and
The
turned it
key-
into a dirty bus.
The key people here really is the R&D, the research and development on the batteries, those companies out there. That's where we need to invest, we gotta find the right one.
Right. Yeah, and, you know, electric is great, you know, when you're talking about a four-door sedan cutting through the city of Syracuse. I just don't think the technology is there yet. You know, plus you're, you know, Buffalo or Rochester just took 1.1 million?
Yeah, it was Buffalo.
Buffalo, $1.1 million, one bus.
Wow.
It's not in the cold weather places, it's just.
So, but does that like our buses here now have a life of 12 years?
Correct.
So, who knows even if that bus will have that 12-year life?
The
That's an expensive bus.
Yeah, the current, I mean, technically, the way the buses are being built right now is New Flyers, regular C&D or diesel bus. The frame and everything is still the same. What they're doing is pulling the propulsion system out, filling it with, you know, battery packs and the motor, the electric motor for the drivetrain. So the structure of the bus is still pretty much the same. It wouldn't look much different driving down the street. You wouldn't hear it, but it wouldn't look much different. So the 12-year range on the vehicle itself is there. The batteries are where their use life is questionable. I mean, technology continues to evolve there. So, you know, part of that is recycling the batteries, and one thing probably down the road is we'll talk about is the lease option on batteries. So it's essentially leasing the batteries for this. So if something does go wrong, the manufacturer takes the battery back and replaces it. And just as Jeff talked about various vendors, currently we have not seen a hydrogen bus on property here. It's only been a battery electric bus by these vendors. There are two main locations that are doing hydrogen. A couple of them are in Chicago, just outside of Chicago, and then a lot in Southern California. So we're hopeful that in this process, there's a borrow a bus program that's out of Ohio, that they tour the country with their hydrogen bus to let transit authorities try it out, test drive it. So we're working on getting that bus here, hopefully on site. We can set it up that some of you guys can partake in that demonstration to just see the difference. And it's still there's still batteries on a hydrogen bus, but with the hydrogen, it creates the electricity while the bus is driving around to charge those batteries. So that's kind of the difference when you're talking of a fuel cell, which is a hydrogen bus, versus 6 battery packs on an electric bus. It's got battery electric. This hydrogen bus only has 1 pack that they continue to charge.
You know, as Jeff was talking about infrastructure costs, you know, we can charge 6 buses with our current electricity that can come to this building. Our engineers have looked at it, so the most you can do is 6. You know, and then where do we put the charging stations? Is the roof gonna hold a unit that comes down from the ceiling? I mean, you guys have seen the bus garage. I mean, it's just line of buses. So now you're instead of having a cookout in the jail out, we're building a substation over there, you know? So there's, you know, the infrastructure cost to even get to where we would need to be versus, you know, then you get the challenges with the hydrogen. It's a delivery issue. You know, you can't pipe it in. It's gotta be delivered by a truck.
For the record, I wanna hear the bus coming, by the way.
Well,
I wanna hear a bus coming.
when we were out in Denver, they have what they call the mall. So they took a stretch of the street, and it's just shops and restaurants and storefronts that they have a speaker on the front of the bus that sounds like a motor running. So as the bus approaches and it stops, it makes you think you hear the bus from an artificial sound. So I would think, and as other facilities put in
I never
their
thought
buses,
about
I think
that,
this is a
Seriously?
proponent that you hear something.
Cause we're gonna be on our phones,
The
walking,
proverbial
everybody's on their
getting
phone
by a
walking
bus could
across
be much
the
more
street.
realistic.
Yeah.
Right?
That's a bit.
You think a scooter's coming, it's a bus.
Yeah.
Given
So
the.
we were the leaders, you know, we went to C&G over 20 years ago, and, you know, we've been the leader in upstate New York on, I mean, CNG is near zero emission. You know, it really is. It's as clean as you can get before you hit electric or hydrogen. And we've been the leader in that, you know, and that's one of the things that we have been consistently telling our state delegation, is that, you know, there's other alternatives out there. You know, you come out with these rules and you say, okay, by, you know, 2035 or 2040, all state vehicles gotta be electric, including buses, and, you know, there's other alternatives out there, you know, and we're hoping people can start seeing that, and that, you know, they, I don't know, listen, I don't know.
California's really big on trying to find an alternative source because the power grid is really taking us.
Yeah, they can't charge them.
Given the push, it seems like it's only gonna get more and more vocal, because electrifying things, it's easy to say, right? It's easy to, oh, we're going electric, you
Feel
know,
good,
it's
feel
all
good.
green, right, it's, forget about all the hard stuff, we're just gonna have electric buses. Given the likelihood that this is here to stay, are there other options that either have been evaluated in the past, like the trolley style with the catenary, or other things along those lines, or is it just we're doubling down on hydrogen, and hopefully our state delegation, hopefully Magnarelli and what's his face from Buffalo there get on board? Kennedy.
You know, the only other thing we tried here was a hybrid. It was a diesel electric bus, and that was a number of years ago.
2007.
Yeah.
The technology wasn't there for those vehicles, and that's what really pushed our push to CNG. You know, hopefully in that process, if you're not familiar, is it 2 years ago when Governor Cuomo did his budget address, he named 5 transit authorities in the state of New York that had to convert 25% of their fleet by 2025. We were exempt from that because of our investment in CNG. You know, 66% of our fleet in all 4 counties is CNG. 90% of it, 92% of it in Syracuse alone is CNG. So it shows that we've invested in this and we've done that. They've recognized that, but that doesn't stop that doesn't give us the exemption for the next 20 years. But hopefully by 2035, 2040, we can start the process. Another point with hydrogen, you know, of course, for the chairman, in 2019, the Halloween flood in Utica.
Yeah.
You know, we continue to run service during that stretch of the week and the weekends as people were flooded and houses were flooded, that we could still provide, you know, transportation to grocery stores, appointments, family members. We shut the power off to the facility as it took on over 2 feet of water. How do you run an electric bus in Utica to do that? You know, we have calls from National Grid here in Syracuse during the summer to say, hey, we'll give you credits if you guys go on your generator because the grid is overloaded right now. You know, how do we do that in the middle of August during the fair while these buses are needed to run 20 hours a day? So, you know, we're exploring other alternatives. We're being active in it, but you know, hopefully finding what is that fix. You know, is it another alternative? Does something else come down the pike in the meantime? You know,
And like I said, you know, I mean, to make a blanket statement that by 2035 you go electric, when you're talking a 4-door sedan that's taking a codes officer in the city of Syracuse around, that's great. You know, you can plug that in anywhere. You're talking a 40-foot bus.
Yeah.
That's trying to run for, 10 or 12 hours a day. It's just, in some cases not feasible. We're just hoping that the state delegation, hears us and is open to other alternatives, because there's other ways to go clean that would be much less costly and easier to operate.
Okay. I'm gonna keep this moving. I know
Steve?
we had applications. Thank you. Nice report.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I'm gonna start out with, as many of you know, on October 13th, we had 2 public hearings, one in the early afternoon, one in the early evening, regarding our proposed service changes in Auburn. We did 2 presentations. As expected, the total public attendance at those 2 public hearings was 1 individual. That individual did not wish to offer any public comment. They were there for whatever they were there for. They did not comment. We are in the process of putting together a summary of all public comment that goes back to when we began the service discontinuance. We did receive some emails and some phone calls. What we'll do is put together a summary for the board. The board then will have a public comment summary, and next month I'll ask the board to take formal action on the fate of those services in Auburn. That will be for the November meeting. Does anybody have any questions? I want to thank Tina and Darlene for attending those public hearings. It is what it is. When you have services that
It was
only.
exhilarating, wasn't it?
It was tedious.
Great. When you have services only a handful of people are using, that was not surprising that was gonna be the outcome. I would like to speak about ridership right now. Our ridership, as you know, with the reduction of services in Syracuse, it has impacted ridership. From an overall perspective, it dropped our ridership about 10 to 12%. But from what we had on the road, it was probably about a 30% reduction of ride. So we're hopeful as we move forward that we can get more of our services back on the road, that ridership will pick up. We're seeing some stabilizing in the outer properties where we have colleges in Oswego and up in Syracuse University. Obviously, we're seeing an increase over last year when those entities were not having in-person classes. Utica and Rome has stabilized. I can tell you that in the month of October, what I'm seeing so far is some significant increase in Utica and some increases in Cayuga. We're getting into colder weather where more people will want to use our bus services, and hopefully that will continue in the outer properties. As far as Syracuse goes, as Brian had mentioned, we are working at restoring some services in the coming weeks. We don't have an exact date for those, for the restoration. I can tell you that we're focusing on a few areas. One would be to restore service to the communities that are still without service, your Manoa, your Tully and Lafayette areas where we currently do not have any service that we had previously. So we're looking to restore those services. We're also looking to start the day earlier. Currently, our first lineup is about 6 o'clock in the morning. We really need to get buses on the road earlier in the morning to provide better access for first shift workers so they can get to work for a 7 a.m. shift locations. We're also going to look at our core routes where we have historically a lot of ridership and increasing the frequency during middays on those services. It will not be every route. We're still in analysis and seeing what we're going to be able to add, but certainly we'd like to increase the frequency on in our urban core closest to our hub where we can provide more frequent service and provide some relief for our customers. Our buses are a little crowded right now. I think that is we've received some complaints about that. By having increased frequency and having increased options for individuals, it will naturally spread out ridership over our buses. So that is what we're looking to do. Like I said, it is a process. It's an evaluation. We're really almost rebuilding the system from scratch in a very, very quick manner. So we're working hard on it. And hopefully in March and in summer we can get closer to what we would normally consider a regular schedule. But it's been a process, and we're continuing to listen to customers as they make requests for what they would like to see in locations where they'd like to see them. We're doing the best we can to honor those and get something to those locations. It's not always easy. Building a system with 1,200 trips a day, it's a pile of Jenga pieces, and we've kind of thrown all the pieces on the floor and kind of rebuilt from scratch. So that's what we're doing, and it's a process that has been very difficult considering the existing climate that we have from HR perspective.
The new plant, Amazon, which we built out there in Clay, is that going to increase your ridership out there because of the people?
We believe so. Once it gets up and running, we were anticipating that would be maybe had started this fall. That has not happened. We're still waiting to find an exact start date for that location. The good news is that Amazon did a really nice job of reaching out to us very early in the process. They picked a location that's on an existing bus route. We don't have to do much to ensure that they will have the service they need. It's shifting existing routes or existing trips to meet their shift times. It's right on the bus route. We will pull in and pull out of that location very quickly. They've built traffic signalization, they have a crosswalk, they have done everything correct from a transportation standpoint to help us provide the services they need. So that's very good.
What about the one across the street, GME Wildest?
They're right on the bus route, same thing, we have ample service, that comes right down, our main bus route comes this way, this line that goes that way, so they are within 100 yards from two existing bus routes that run very frequently. So that they will easily be able to access JMA with sets up and running as well. So again, those are really good success stories from an economic development standpoint, where the organization really looked at transportation, made it a priority where they wanted to locate, communicated with us early. That's what we need every time that it happens. It's very difficult when we have.
All too often, it doesn't happen that way.
Yes.
And one of the things I've been working with, like SACPA, city and county planning, is coming to us with a project prior to sticking a shovel in the ground and asking, what's the bus service gonna be like? Because all too often, we build a building and then they come and say, hey, can you run a bus out there? And again, like I've said before, your bus runs, it's only a mile away, can't you just run it up the street? No. It's a mile up, it's a mile back, it adds 5-6 minutes to the route, and then we don't make our next connection, and so, yeah, as Steve said, it was great to work with them early on.
Yeah. Have you guys been in contact with OSIDA and the county about White Plains, or, White Pines?
Have not.
The development, the pending development that's out there, I think it's in Clay.
It's in Clay, yeah.
It's supposed to be pretty big, and I think they're trying to throw a chunk of change at it, but it sounds like one of those things where they're gonna build it and then ask
Big
for
chip
transit.
manufacturer out there.
Yep.
Yeah.
We've been in communication with some other, we've met with a group that's out by Baldwinsville, that we're gonna try to serve that location in the near future. These industrial parks, as they pop up, they really need service out from the city to those locations for workers. We're gonna do the best we can and accommodate them. It is something that has transitioned in the past 10 years, where it used to be the priority was getting people from the suburbs to jobs downtown. That has flipped. That script has flipped almost 100%, where now it's the exact opposite. So when you build your suburban, your commuter services, you really have to focus on making sure you get people to that location out there rather than here at key times, because it's probably gonna be more of a need to address that reverse commute situation than the regular commute, getting people from the suburbs to the city. So it's, but you still have your University Hill area, where you have a huge number of potential riders and users of the system. So it's kinda complicated the system a little bit, but as long as those lines of communication with these business parks continue, we'll be able to address them and provide what they need to the best of our ability.
And that's one of the challenges with redesigning the system too, is the typical workday is not the typical workday anymore. You got companies you don't work 8 to 5 downtown and then go home, you're working 4 10s, you're working 3 12s. So it's become a challenge.
Yeah, we transitioned from a traditional first shift community to one that's the service industry related, which everyone has different shifts.
Mhm.
And it's, and the middays, that's why we're addressing the middays, because the middays really are where people, where we're missing and missing opportunities and needs for individuals to get to and from jobs. It's the middays that we really need to bulk up.
One other question, I know you're thinking in advance of the future I-81, when that reconstruction of that, how it's gonna affect Central also too.
The impact is going to be, certainly when they actually begin work on the viaduct to take it down, it's going to disrupt the downtown area. And we think that they'll probably need some type of park and ride network to get people from the suburban locations who won't want to sit in traffic to get to where they need to be, especially on the University Hill and downtown. It will be interesting to see how that actually plays out in reality once the viaduct comes down. People sometimes will find ways of using back side streets and do everything they can to maintain the keys and getting behind the wheel of their car, but we're going to offer them opportunities to use public transportation to reduce congestion during the tear down and rebuild of the viaduct, or tear down and the reconstruction of what was the viaduct.
Thanks, Steve. Mike?
Thanks.
One more question.
Steve.
Oh, yes.
When we suspend a route, like we did, how long does it take when we start it up again to get the ridership back to where it was?
That's a very interesting question, and I'll say in a pandemic world, that timeframe is much different than a non-pandemic world. I will tell you that suspending a route during a non-pandemic timeframe does not ring a bell. I don't know if we've ever done that, but I would say you're going to normally be months before you return the ridership to a level if you have suspended it for any period of time. If it's a reroute or a detour, not a big deal, but if you suspend a bus route for 6 months and then you restore it, you are gonna have some individuals who have made other choices. You'll have some people who do not have other choices and will jump back on that bus as soon as it is there. In a pandemic world, you're gonna have a lot of factors that are gonna affect that. It could be level of the virus in the community, how comfortable am I getting on a bus that's crowded, is the bus empty, how, so I think there's a lot that goes into it. I will say that from a global perspective, the transportation community nationwide is not expecting a return to normalcy from a ridership perspective for probably 2024. So it's going to be a while.
And that's what I hear when I talk with my counterparts throughout the country too. It's not just upstate New York.
Yeah. And then, we will see, and by normalcy, I would state that would be ridership that is within 5 to 7% of what it was. That's 2024, I don't expect it to get there until then.
And I think what we're gonna be doing is creating a new normal. Like I said, I mean, the work hours have changed, the travel patterns, everything has changed. There's gonna be a new normal in the next couple of years.
The office worker that would ride 5 days a week from a certain location to an office may now only be going to the office 2 or 3 times a week. So you may be losing some ridership there, but you may gain, if we look at some of these on-demand services we're looking at, you may gain the ability to get people from one part of their community to another part of the community during the midday, instead of having them go to and from work. They may want a transportation option that gets them from their home to the gym, or their home to a grocery store, or their home to the doctor within their community, which is a better option for them than what their traditional travel patterns were. So it's just, the transportation industry right now is just in a state of flux.
Thanks, Steve.
Thanks.
Mike, you're up.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'll try to be as brief as I can. Maintenance Connection, which is the program that we're replacing the AS400, an aged program that controls all the work orders and everything that go on for all the vehicles and the facilities. We're continuing to expand that process. We've included the buildings and ground side. We've included some foremen in the process, and even some technicians we're getting involved. The feedback's actually been pretty good. There's still a lot of different things that are going on in that process when we're looking at trying to import preventative maintenance procedures and other things that are filling out in templates, and been some issues with that. Jim Anderson came up with a tool that he actually created to actually validate that information before we send it off to be scripted to be imported into the system. That I hope will speed up that process for us. So that's looking pretty good. Trapeze, which is another program that we've been working on for our accident incident tracking system, in a testing mode. We believe that that'll be able to go to live in the next couple of weeks. So we're kind of excited to get that going. Once that's done, we have a fix that we need to do on the fixed route planning side of things that Steve's team works on. We hope to get that done today, and if not, sometime early next week. Once that's done, we can proceed to the next step, which is looking at upgrading that version from version 18 to version 21. Once we get to version 21, there's a whole bunch of other different things that we're going to start taking a look at too. That project, it'll probably take months, probably about 4 or 5 months for that version upgrade to actually happen. On a cybersecurity note, we did do, without going into too much detail, we did 2 additions to our program, an internal program that actually helps us to monitor different types of actions that are going on. If there's a malicious application that's doing stuff that's not supposed to be doing, we'll be able to scan for it and see that. As well as the ability to track other things that are going on some of our internal systems, our firewalls, our switches, and that have been added. We had some of these programs before from other vendors that fell down. We're now doing it internally with other tools. So it's kind of exciting to be able to see that. Carlos has been very, I should say, talented in bringing this into play for us. And then finally, we kicked off this past week our hardware project, upgrade project. We got grant money to be able to start replacing some of the hardware that we have. We'll start with the back office type of stuff, the servers, the main storage area, and then we'll move forward to the rest of that, which will also include actually upgrading our firewalls and some of the desktops as we go through that. And that'll probably be a good 12-month project, just because of the different complexities of the things that are going on in that. And that will conclude that report.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. Thank you.
Joe?
Good morning. Last September 30th was the end of the second quarter for paratransit or call of us. We have seen an increase in our overall rides and our individual riders. We're up about 24% compared to the same quarter, which is good news. Those folks are getting their full service. So as you've heard today, that we have cut back on some services or we've suspended areas. We have not done any of that to our paratransit clients. We have left it in full 100% mode. They do require, obviously, certain things that need to be provided to them.
And that ridership is rebounding quicker than.
Yeah, and it's rebounding quicker. They have needs, they have needs, whether it's doctors, workshops, whatever they're doing. So we left that alone. The other thing we did leave alone, which probably hasn't been mentioned, or maybe it was earlier today, is BOE. Those are the two things we focused on, was our paratrans and our BOE. Even though we had to cut back on some of the fixed route side, those were the two most important things for us to maintain 100%. As you can see, there's it's a dilemma out there for other districts that are having problems moving their kids. We knew the city was gonna have the same issue with some of their vendors, and we didn't wanna be that problem. So, the first week or two we had was a struggle, but we got through it, and we're running very consistent now. So, those are the important things. And again, just to reiterate, we are maintaining 100% for our paratransit side, so that is an important thing. Quickly, we've discussed it most of the morning.
So Joe, on the paratransit, you had to take some drivers in the fleet to move them to the paratransit?
No, what we did is we've maintained, by cutting back some of the services that were our fixed route side, you had to take so much back, but what we didn't do was have that effect push on to the call bus piece. So we were able to maintain, so if we needed 100 operators to run fixed route, we maybe went to 80, but we left our call bus at our normal levels. We left our vendors at our normal levels. So the Senate service is being provided without fail, because those are folks that really do rely on us. And we didn't take it out on them because we stopped running at 8 o'clock at night in a certain area if they needed to run a trip that normally would run till midnight. So we've maintained our service area for them at 100%.
We appreciate
Same
it.
with BOE. I know we've been discussing a lot about service and operators today, so I'm not gonna get into it too deeply, but as Steve mentioned, we are looking at other opportunities to put more service on the street. We hope November 8th is gonna be our next, our spot to put some enhanced service out there. It could be the 15th, Steve's team's working on it as we speak, literally, trying to get it out. And it does take a bit of time to get drivers signed up and things, so we're shooting for November 8th, no later than November 15th, but we will have a more enhanced service that's out there today. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes all the reports.
Very good, those are really good reports. Thank you. We're gonna go to Audit and Finance Committee. We had a short agenda. First of all, Linda and her team did a good presentation from our physical report on our finances to a verbal report, which was really, really well, and the authority seems to be in a healthy financial position, which is good. The ratio that was provided was very enlightening to me, and some of us that have been around around for a while. The mortgage recording tax seems to be at a place where very healthy, especially for the growth with real estate in the various counties, particularly Onondaga and Oneida, seem to be generating some revenue for us. And I always say that tax is a tax that when Oneida first joined the authority, there was some political concerns about an extra tax on the closing of a property sale. I've been on this board going on 17 years. I never once had one phone call or concern regarding that tax, so.
Nobody understands it.
Right, and it's the smallest fee as you're purchasing or closing on a property, so, you know, they're like.
Mortgage brokers.
signatures.
Yeah, your mortgage broker's like, sign here, sign here,
Right.
sign here, initial here.
So.
Oh yeah, here's your closing costs, and it's
Yeah.
all buried in there with your recording taxes and everything else.
It's good news, for the authority, for those numbers to continue to do well. So, with that being said, good work by the finance team. Linda and your team, Melissa and everybody.
I'd like to point out, this is the first meeting in a while that Caitlin hasn't spent any money, so.
You know, I wasn't even gonna
You guys can rest easy.
I wasn't even gonna mention Caitlin. Caitlin's like,
She's got a lot on the horizon though, so be careful.
Yeah.
Saving it up.
Good, that's a very good point. But with that being said, I need a motion was made to bring it to the full board. I need a motion to have this approved. Tina, second, Robert, all in favor?
Aye.
Good. Also, there was a revision to our property disposal guidelines. We had that, we revised it a little bit. No questions really asked for that, pretty boring of a topic probably. So a motion was made to bring it to the full board for approval. Could I have a motion? Tina, second, Julius, all in favor? Aye. Okay. And then we just had some, few updates, but that was about it. So, that concludes the, finance report. And now I'm gonna turn it over to, Bob. He's gonna report out on our pension committee that we met with this morning.
This morning, we had a pension committee meeting. The LESCO advisors presented a detailed overview regarding the plan's returns and allocations. In addition, they had a discussion about the overall market. Mr. Chairman, that concludes my pension report, committee report.
Good, and you gotta understand something too with that pension, you know, we as trustees of that pension, I was tallying things up as of that point in time from that quarter. We're just shy of $89 million on those three plans. That is some significant sums of money that is entrusted in this board to, you know, to oversee what our rest of people's livelihoods in the future, but that number has really grown over the years.
And Nick and I were talking about, it was in the 20s when we started.
Yeah,
Here,
so,
you know.
it's come a long, you know, you think about a number like $90 million, are you kidding me?
Mr. Chairman, point of clarification, I might have missed it, the advertising, was people advertising on the bus and everything, what is percentage of revenue, maybe 1%?
Linda, what?
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, for the
Maybe.
fairs?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, like
It's
they
small.
advertise on the bus and, you know, you have those companies that advertise.
The Lamar.
Okay.
The Lamar contract is on the busing.
Busing and advertising, you know, like the horse tour amount of advertising, busing.
Yeah, that's a line item,
Very
so
minimal.
750,000.
We say minimal, even if it's, we think
We're talking an $80 million budget, it's like
Yeah,
1%.
it's nominal.
it's
It's not.
percent maybe?
Yeah,
We're not gonna turn it away, but.
Yeah,
Yeah, no.
Good, no, good point. Board, any more questions, old or new business, anything? Thank you for your service.